Hello, everyone. Welcome to Queer Lawyers Speak, hosted by LAGBAC, Chicago's LGBTQ+ Bar Association. My name is Adam Zebelian. I'm a partner at Schiller, Ducanto, and Fleck, where I practice family law. I'm also the current president of LAGBAC, Chicago's LGBTQ+ Bar Association. Today's topic is DEI, and we have really the founder of DEI in the legal profession, Sandra Yamate. And she is also our first ally that we've ever had on the show, and boy, is she a great ally to our community. So welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. You're giving me a little bit too much credit as far as my role in DEI, but I appreciate it.
I don't think so. I think you deserve all the credit. So Sandra, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sandra Yamate, and I'm the CEO of a not-for-profit organization called the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession. We've been in existence for about 16 years. Prior to that, I've been working in the profession on issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion for most of my career, which is, some 40 years now.
Well, we're so excited to have you here and talk about DEI because, as everyone's well aware, it's under attack right now.
Yes.
Why don't we first, before we go there, talk about what led you to doing this work?
Obviously, in some ways, I'm an Asian American woman. I grew up in Chicago in a predominantly white community, but it was a very welcoming community. For the most part. I grew up, I was a child during the civil rights movement in the 60s. So I thought that what I saw the teenagers doing in terms of protesting and trying to make the world better, and many of the kinds of slogans that they were seeking out made perfect sense to me. Make love, not war, and for peace, and I thought that was a fine thing. I came of age during the efforts in the Japanese American community to achieve redress for their wrongful incarceration during World War II. And that also, I think, gave me a keener sense that I wanted to be part of a legal community that was able to really work to effectuate positive change for groups that had not always been treated fairly.
And you ended up choosing to go to law school. You went to U of I for undergrad.
Yes.
And then you went to Harvard for law school.
Yes.
Did you leave law school entering the nonprofit space, or what did you do once you left Harvard? Because many doors are open to you when you go to Harvard Law School.
Not having a lot of lawyers in my family at all. I mean, I was a first-generation lawyer. I did what I saw my classmates, for the most part, doing, which was I got a job at a big law firm here in Chicago, where I learned a lot, and I met some great people and got terrific training. But it wasn't always entirely satisfactory. At the same time, I looked around Chicago, and I didn't really see other Asian lawyers. There was one other Asian associate in the firm where I was at, but for the most part, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. And so I guess I've always had a proclivity toward being involved in things that I thought would better the profession. So as there was no group of Asian lawyers, I joined what was then the Latin American Bar Association, which is a predecessor of today's Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois. And I worked on Hispanic issues.
Because there was no organization that was there for Asian American
There was none.
Lawyers.
And so, I got to know a lot of really tremendous Hispanic lawyers, but it also left you feeling like, oh, it would be so nice if we had something like this if there were other Asian lawyers. But never seeing any, I had no idea that there even were that many out there. And I think maybe it was the time was right, but Harold
Now, when
Washington.
are we talking? What?
We're talking the late 1980s.
Okay.
Harold Washington is the mayor. He establishes an advisory outreach group to the Asian American community. A lawyer named Paul Igasaki was his liaison to our community. Paul is a native of Chicago, but had spent a lot of time working in California. He decided that it was time to start an Asian American Bar Association. So he and two of his staff actually combed through Sullivan's Law Directory.
Oh, wow.
Looking for Asian-sounding names, and invited people to come together for a lunch that was hosted at, I guess it was Mayor Brown's offices when they were still at 190 South LaSalle. And 50 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
And we were just astonished, the idea that we could see that many people who looked like us in one room. It was quite remarkable. Paul also likes to tell the story that we got some very nice letters, like from a lawyer named Lee, thanking us for the invitation and wishing us well, but explaining that he was African American and was declining to get involved at this stage. But yeah, it was. I think the time was right. Another friend of mine later liked to tell a story how she ended up getting involved in the Black Women Lawyers Association because she too didn't see any other Asian lawyers. And at one point they took her aside and said, "Not that we don't love you, and not that you're not welcome, but why don't you Asians start your own group?" So eventually we did. That was 1987.
Now the Asian American Bar Association is a national organization with thousands of members.
Well, it's an affiliate of a national organization. This kind of sometimes bothers people in other parts of the country, but we in Chicago were really lucky. We had one of the early Asian American large law firm partners, Young Kim, who was our first president, and brought a degree of professionalism and sophistication that I don't think that we as young lawyers, young first-gen lawyers necessarily had. And so we got off to what we thought was a rip-roaring start here in Chicago, and we looked around and said, hey, we can do it here, let's do it nationally. And so we were able to help coordinate founding the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. So its founding place is here in Chicago.
I see. So two Asian American Bar Associations were started here in Chicago.
Well, a local one, and then the national one. So it's kind of like LAGBAC is local, and then you've got the National LGBTQ plus bar that's on the national level.
But they were both founded here.
Both in Chicago.
By you and your colleagues here in Chicago.
Chicago has played an instrumental role in that.
Now, have you been the president of both organizations, or?
No, I was the president of the local Asian American Bar Association. I was their third president, the first woman. I was the first Central Region governor for the National Asian Pacific Bar. But in those days, I will say we had a lot of headbutting with our friends and relatives in California, and so for many of the early years of NAPAPA's history, Chicago was...
Which is the National Bar, the acronym
right,
for the National
Chicago was sort of the leader of what I will call the loyal opposition.
Well, when we start things, we want to control it. It's the Chicago way.
It is. But, and I think that the Californians had their idea of how it should be based on their much longer experience in California. But, Chicago, we've got a strength of personality here.
We do. We're strong and loyal, and we like to fight for what's right.
Well, this might sound petty, but years later, on some of the issues that we ended up losing to California, later on they realized that we had been right, and they should have done it our way.
All right. Good. Go Chicago. All right. So you were at a large law firm for what, about a decade? Is that right?
About 5 years.
Okay, and then you left big law.
Yes, I was really enjoying the work I was doing at the Asian American Bar Association. I thought that maybe I would be happier in my practice if I was at a minority-owned firm. So I tried that for 2 or 3 years, and I thought this is okay, but it still wasn't a good fit.
What were you practicing? I'm just curious.
A lot of litigation, insurance, defense work.
Okay.
So then I thought, well, maybe I'm just not cut out to be a litigator. Maybe I should try transactional work, which I tried for a while and found that no, that really wasn't for me either.
And transactional work is paperwork, essentially. Not to diminish our friends in transactional work.
Somebody has to do it.
Someone has to do it. I don't do it, but other people do it.
I'm not good at it, so I'm glad other people do it.
Agree. Same.
Yeah.
So after you tested transactional work, said, maybe this lawyer thing isn't for me.
Right. So my husband and I had started a small publishing company. Because from the Asian American Bar Association, I was getting much more active in the Asian American community. And so I was starting to see a lot of needs in this community that were being left unmet. And so I thought that given my interest in things like education and so on, that it would make sense to try to publish children's books about the Asian American experience. Most children's books, if they featured Asian Americans, they were part of sort of this broad panorama in the background, or they were fables or folk tales or stories set in Asia that tended to exoticize them. They didn't really explore what it was to be of Asian ancestry growing up in the U.S. And so we tried to create stories that explored those experiences.
And you published quite a few books.
We published about 14.
Oh, wow.
But I would say in some ways I think it was a little too early because here in Chicago, because of the demographics, there was already a strong sense of what I'll call a pan-Asian American identity, where a Japanese American could be supportive of Chinese Americans and Korean Americans could be supportive of the Indonesian Americans and the South Asians. Everybody could be part of this pan-Asian identity. In other parts of the country, that was not quite the case. A lot of that got galvanized more in 1982 when Vincent Chin was murdered in Michigan. You're from Michigan, so you probably know that story. He was a young Chinese American man who was out celebrating with two friends, sort of his bachelor party. He was supposed to be getting married the following week. Two unemployed auto workers thought that he was Japanese and blamed him for their unemployed status. They ended up beating him to death with baseball bats in the parking lot of this restaurant. They never served a day in jail because the judge said that they were upstanding citizens, and even though this hadn't been right, that you don't put men like that in jail. It ended up then getting prosecuted at the federal level. It was one of the earliest federal hate crimes that was prosecuted. But again, there was no conviction. And so it was an ongoing open wound, I think, in this community, but it forced everyone to realize that whether we might see distinctions between somebody who is Filipino versus somebody who's Korean versus somebody who's Pakistani, for the broader community, we were just all Asian, and it was easy enough to mistake one for the other, and we needed to band together. So I think that really galvanized a sense of a pan-Asian American identity.
And so when you say, I had actually never heard that story, and I'm from the Detroit area.
Oh, really?
Now, in my defense, it was a year before I was born.
Okay.
But I had heard that name before. Mm-hmm. How do you think that impacted you personally as far as what you did with your career?
That it was one of those really obvious incidents where something egregiously wrong had transpired, that there was no justice. And it was really critically important to try to be in a position where you could make sure those things don't happen in the future.
Mm-hmm. So you have this publishing company, you start organizing really within the Asian community, and then you go where?
I think the publishing company was a little ahead of its time because, like I said, this pan-Asian identity was still a newfangled idea in other parts of the country. So it was hard to get...
So it was more of a Midwest feeling.
It was very much a Chicago feeling.
Okay.
So that it was hard, I think, to get people of one Asian ethnic background to buy books about another. But we tried, and it was fun. And so in the meantime, a group here in Chicago got started, the Chicago Committee on Minorities in Large Law Firms. And I was approached to apply to be their first executive director because the thought was that my Harvard pedigree might encourage the leadership in Chicago's large law firms to at least take a meeting with me. No telling whether they would actually listen to me or be persuaded by me, but that they might actually take a meeting and we could begin to try to create a community in Chicago of the large law firms to think about how do we better address in a collective fashion the recruitment, retention, promotion to partnership of minority attorneys in the city.
Most people don't realize, and I believe this is still true, that Chicago is actually the largest legal community in the country, legal market.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, I've heard that on multiple occasions. And I don't know if it's still true, but it was true at one time. We are a huge legal market. And there are many multinational law firms who are based in Chicago.
Yes.
And so that sort of bringing together of all those leaders is incredibly, a credible opportunity and important.
And it was a lot of fun because it had never been done anywhere else in the country. Boston was starting a similar group. They hired an executive director before Chicago did, but Chicago's group started before theirs. But it was interesting to see all these firms pleased to have a way to create a sense of community for their minority lawyers, because none of the firms had enough critical mass that they were going to do it on their own. And the hope was that by bonding together, we'd create a community so that it would be more likely that these lawyers would stay in Chicago and make their careers here.
And they have.
They have.
We have a very diverse legal community, in large part due to leaders like yourself.
Well, I think that I have to give a lot of credit to a lot of the people who started the group, so people like Victor Henderson and Earl Barnes, who've been stalwarts in the African American legal community, and Angela Dorn and Crystal Ashby. They had the vision to try to make sure that all these groups came together. And they were farsighted enough to realize that they weren't going to just make it about the African American lawyers. They wanted to be much more inclusive than that. And I give them full credit for it.
So this new group has started. You become the executive director. Mm-hmm. How long did you stay in that role?
I stayed there for about 3 years, and then the ABA called and said that they'd been watching what I'd been doing and would I be interested in coming to work for them. And like a lot of people of my generation, I had a less than positive view of the ABA because I was still very much aware of the history whereby the ABA didn't used to let people of color join the organization. But I went to the meeting just to see what it was like, and the job actually sounded interesting. So I accepted it, thinking that I'd be there for a few years, and a few years turned into 10 years.
Oh, wow. So you're at the ABA doing what, the same work? Or?
I was the director of the group called the Commission on Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the Profession.
And you were in that role for how long?
10 years.
Before you started IILP?
Yes.
Which is the acronym for your organization?
Yes.
What led you then to go branch off on your own and start your own nonprofit?
The ABA does a lot of good things, but there's also some dysfunction in it. It was structured in such a way that the emphasis in my role became less about the substance of trying to do things to advance racial and ethnic diversity in the profession, and more about, can I throw a bigger and glitzier fundraiser, an awards luncheon? And I found out that I could. I can help you pick the music and time it so that people will be weeping in their chairs. But it wasn't why I went to law school. And so I left, and
you didn't want to become a party planner? Not that there's anything wrong
No.
with being a party planner, but
and that's a talent.
it is very much a talent, yes.
But it wasn't a very satisfactory outlet for my other interests, which were trying to do something to make this profession better.
So you start IILP, and explain to the audience what IILP does. Is it Chicago-based? Is it national, international?
Well, it started by happenstance because when I left the ABA, I had gone to be the chief diversity officer for a startup e-discovery company. But
Now, what year is this?
this is 2008.
So at
So
that
it's
time,
economic downturn.
yeah, right before I graduated from law school too, and when you in 2008, that was quite a position because they didn't really have those sorts of positions
They
at that
did not
time.
have a lot of positions like that. It was very novel. But after about 6 months, the fellow who started it said, "Oh, I forgot to pay my personal income taxes. I'm going to take all the money out of the company." So everybody got laid off. So it's 2008. There's an economic downturn, and I'm wondering, well, now what am I going to do? And some friends challenged me to come up with a description of what the right organization to diversify the profession ought to look like, because they said they were tired of listening to me just grouse about it. So I did. And then on a lark, I sent this concept paper to a man named Mark Firestone. At the time, he was the general counsel for Kraft Foods. This is before Kraft split into Kraft and Mondelez became Heinz. And I just said, "Dear Mr. Firestone, I don't expect that you will remember me, but I used to work at the ABA. I once invited you to come and speak at a program that I'm doing, and you did, and you were great, and I loved what you had to say. I have this idea for a new organization to further move diversity efforts in the profession. May I come and speak with you about it?" And he said yes. So one summer afternoon, I went up to their headquarters in the suburbs. We spent a lovely 40 minutes where I was explaining to him what I was thinking and what this concept paper was all about. And before I could get home, Adam, he's emailing me to tell me that he liked the idea. He had taken it to their CEO already, gotten approval. Kraft was going to back me in this, and he would be the chairman of the board.
Wow. So you had which is a great organization for funding purposes, influence.
It was the best professional afternoon of my life.
I bet. Wow. So from there, how did you just grew?
No, I was lucky. The following week, the ABA was having its big annual meeting here in Chicago.
Good timing.
I scheduled lots of meetings with people I'd been working with on these issues for years while I'd been at the ABA, and I basically said, I think I've got this new not-for-profit. Will you help me? And I was so blessed, Adam. People were so kind. A friend from Baker McKenzie said, "This sounds intriguing. You're going to need some startup funds," and they wrote a check.
Oh, wow.
And then Jenner and Block, a friend of mine there, said, "We're going to support you in this. We'll give you pro bono legal services. We will help you start this." And yeah, they had us incorporated, and we had our tax-exempt status before the summer was out.
Wow.
They were phenomenal. And then the Chicago Bar Association said, "We'll support this. We'll incubate you." And they gave us an office and a computer and a phone, and to this day, that's where we're housed.
So I could talk to you all day, and because you have such vast knowledge of DEI, where it's been, where it's going. Let's talk about, with the remaining time, what's going on with DEI, and what are you confronting as someone on the front lines of what's occurring?
It's battling for its public survival. DEI is not going to go away. It's clearly under siege, as you mentioned at the top of the show. It's being forced to go underground. It's feeling threatened on all fronts. Things that used to be perfectly acceptable and reasonable, now people have to stop and question not only the efficacy, but the safety of doing it, the safety of even saying you're doing it. It's really battling for its public survival. But it's not going to go away because if you look at the country's demographics, we are becoming more diverse generation by generation. the issues surrounding diversity, equity, inclusion aren't going to go away.
Are you seeing any pullback here in Chicago based on what this current administration is doing to law firms and that implement DEI policies? Are you seeing a pullback in their funding and their willingness to participate in the efforts and the education?
The funding, it's a little bit early to say. I will say that there are indications that some parts of the legal community of Chicago will pull back, especially because of the directives that they may be having from headquarters in other parts of the country. A lot of the individual lawyers, though, I don't necessarily see that pulling back. There's more of a wringing of the hands. The pullback comes in terms of people being afraid to talk about it and take part in it and to participate. I see lawyers who are suddenly afraid to go to diversity bar association events and programs. I hear them being afraid to speak on these programs, to run for office in these organizations. All of that is still shaking out, but the fact that the young people are afraid is alarming. I'm seeing more of the older generation feeling like, it'd be nice to turn it over to the young people, but if they're afraid or they legitimately can't do it, we have no choice but to step up and fill the void. But it's hard.
Yeah, and your organization is an umbrella organization. You fight for DEI based on any sort of minority status.
Well, we've always focused on inclusion. Our thought was when we started that it didn't make sense for us to try to duplicate the good work that other organizations were already doing. We like to say that other organizations have tended to focus on the demand side, which has tended to be corporate general counsel demanding greater diversity from their outside counsel law firms. We've focused more on the supply side. What do we do to make the legal profession one where anybody with the requisite talent, aptitude, drive, determination, and ability can enter this profession and then rise as high within it as those abilities take?
I see. Okay.
And so that means that we've always focused on trying to be inclusive of everyone. It's also gave us, I think, early on a really good platform to be thinking about and addressing issues of intersectionality before other people in the profession were really conscious about that.
What is that exactly?
The idea that your identity can be more than just your gender or your sexual orientation or your race or any one of a number of other different characteristics. That all of it combines together to make you, a unique and wonderful being, and it should be nice. It'd be nice if you're able to be all those things all at once in whatever organization you're part of.
So, Sandra, we're out of time, but you're going to have to come back. Okay?
My pleasure.
There's much more to talk about, and it's been such an honor to sit with you today and discuss this very important topic. And thank you for all your hard work.
I always enjoy talking to you.
Yes, same. And thank you for all your hard work, Sandra.
Thank you.
We really do thank you. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you the next time. All right, bye-bye.